This is Jewish Spotlight, a weekly television program presented by Chabad Lubavitch of Long Island, featuring various aspects of modern Jewish life and Jewish culture. Now, here is your host, Rabbi Tuvia Teldin.
Shalom, welcome to the Jewish Spotlight. Tonight we're going to have a program about a very solemn, very interesting, very spiritually riveting subject. Something that I think you're going to be very curious about, and I'm sure it's something that you never heard or saw anything about before in your life. You know, the Lubavitcher Rebbe was and still is the greatest Jewish leader that the world has seen since the times of Moses. A person who had such scope as far as leadership was concerned, who saw the whole world as a very small globe where goodness and morality, where Torah values could be brought to literally every single corner of the globe. And of course he was the motivating force behind hundreds and then thousands and then hundreds of thousands of people coming closer to their Judaism, being more involved in traditional lifestyle. And non-Jews also coming closer to what we call the 7 Noahide laws, to feel the importance of morality, and became a religious figure of a height that has never been seen, perhaps since the times of Moses. As a result, today, as many of you know, as those of course who have seen the Jewish Spotlight before know, that Lubavitch now has over 2,500 centers throughout the world. Over 3,500 representatives literally dedicating their lives day and night to being able to bring the light of Torah, the education of morality and of mitzvot, of commandments of God, to all of humanity. And as a result, the Rebbe has always been looked at as a soul that was once of not only a generation, but once in a century, perhaps in a millennium. And when the Rebbe's physical body passed on in 1994, of course it was a time of tremendous grief for the Jewish and even part of the non-Jewish world. Grief because here we had lost a person who was of a stature of leadership for the Jewish world, whose word meant so much, whose insights had brought so much to the lives of so many thousands and even millions of people, and whose wisdom and whose spiritual prowess was something on a stage or on a level that nobody had been able to match whatsoever. Well, when the Rebbe passed away, physically, his spiritual presence was still felt very, very strongly. But as Jewish tradition outlines, and this is a tradition that goes back, again, thousands of years back to the times of Moses, that the place where a tzaddik is the Hebrew word for a very righteous individual, the place where a tzaddik is buried is considered to be holy ground, ground which is considered to be not only sacred, but ground which is a very special place to be able to bring our prayers, our requests, our outpouring of our heart before God in order to be able to feel that sense of oneness with God that so many of us yearn for and want to be able to touch in some way in our lives. In order to understand more about this, and it's a very difficult subject sometimes to understand, but it's a very meaningful, very deep, very personal subject for myself and for hundreds of thousands of Jews around the world. We're going to have with us tonight a very special rabbi, an individual who is the director of the Chabad Center that is located by what is called the Ohel. The Ohel is the place where the Rebbe's body rests. And this is a very holy site of tremendous significance to the Jewish world and of tremendous personal significance to millions, as we'll find out. It's a pleasure to have with us tonight Rabbi Abba Refson, the director of the Chabad House of the Ohel. Rabbi Refson, it's a real pleasure and an honor to have you with us tonight.
Thank you, Rabbi Teldin.
What we're going to do tonight, Rabbi Refson, as I'm sure you're well prepared, we're going to be talking about the meaning of the Ohel to you personally and to the thousands of Jews that you meet on a weekly, monthly basis, and a yearly basis, who come to visit the Ohel. What, in your opinion, does the Ohel represent to all these hundreds of thousands of people who come to visit this area of the world every single year?
In a large way, it represents what the Rebbe represented his whole life. Mm-hmm. People came to the Rebbe for inspiration, for spiritual guidance, and after the Rebbe's passing, people come to the Rebbe's resting place to receive inspiration and spiritual guidance. People come in person, and if they can't come in person, they'll communicate via fax, phone, and email.
Now, by fax, meaning that they will write a letter, and the letter will be faxed over, because of course they can't necessarily get over to you from all corners of the globe, especially if there are emergencies or personal emergencies, medical emergencies, things that they want to supplicate to God for special blessings. So they'll fax their requests to you.
Correct, right. People from all over the world.
Right.
The fax machine operates 24 hours a day because of the various time zones. And it's people from all walks of life who either come or, as we said, send faxes.
Okay, now I just want to mention to our audience also why Rabbi Refson ends up being the, so to say, the representative to be able to be the one to bring the supplications of individuals from throughout the world to the Rebbe's gravesite and be able to personally deliver it. The reason is because after the Rebbe's passing, physically, there were thousands of people who stayed at the gravesite, feeling the longing towards being connected to the Rebbe's soul and wanting to be part of the connection that was there, the spiritual dynamism and the energy, and to want to stay in that hiskashrus, that connection to the Rebbe. Well, slowly but surely, one by one, people left the cemetery until it came to the point that there was one person who refused to leave the cemetery, and that was Rabbi Refson. As a result, immediately arrangements were made for I believe it was a mobile home that was brought to the cemetery, and which he stayed in for a number of months, and then eventually, of course, a house, which was the closest house to the actual gravesite of the Rebbe, was purchased, and that, of course, became the Chabad Center. Now, before we go any further, what I'd like to do is be able to show the tape so people will see and have an idea of what we're talking about, because, of course, this is a very new topic for many people.
Yeah.
Exactly what is this Ohel, what is this place that we're talking about? And, of course, we're going to show a little tape which was made by Rabbi Shalom Lipsker, who heads up Chabad in Florida, who made somewhat of a pilgrimage for tens, if not, I think it was maybe 50 people, one time 60 people, another time, of course, many hundreds who have come from all parts of America and thousands from all over the world to be part of this experience. This particular tape, I think, was for a particular Jewish holiday. Was it the Rebbe's yahrzeit?
Yes.
It was the anniversary of the Rebbe's passing away. So let's show this tape so you'll see the inside of the Ohel, a little bit of the dynamics and what exactly we'll be talking about during the course of this show tonight. We're going to give a little bit of an ongoing commentary also about what's going on here. So the Rebbe, tell us what's going on here.
At the Rebbe's anniversary of the Rebbe's passing, thousands and thousands of people want to be present at the Rebbe's gravesite on that day. So you can see at the shot before, you saw the lines.
People taking off their shoes. What are they doing there?
People take off their shoes because it's a sign of respect before entering the holy place.
Okay.
It dates back to the time of Moses.
Right, now this is the actual gravesite.
Gravesite area.
The two, can you explain what
you see? The two headstones. The one on the left is the Rebbe's resting place. On the right is his father-in-law, the previous Rebbe's resting place. You see people reading the notes that they wrote, notes of requests to the Rebbe. Then they tear the notes and they place them on the gravesite area. And they also pray. Prayer in this holy place is considered more receptive on high.
Now we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but the building itself is very small. Maybe you could fit perhaps a maximum of 50 people inside the Ohel at any one time.
Correct, yes.
Now you see there are the thousands of notes, the sense of a total dedication, a sense of peace, a sense of real, I don't know the word to use, if there are any words that could describe the feeling a person has when they're in the Ohel itself. But you see there are thousands and thousands of notes from people from all over the world who come and submit this supplication. You see here the tombstones also, which give a description of these great tzaddikim, these great rebbes, and the righteous leaders, who they are and what they represent to us and to all of the Jewish people. Okay. All right, Rabbi Refson, that was very interesting. Now, I want to ask you a question. When a person comes to the Ohel and they're praying, why do we need to pray at the Ohel? What is special about praying in the place where a tzaddik, such a righteous person, is buried? As many Jewish people know, we go, let's say, to the cemetery before Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. We go at various times during the year. This is something that dates back for thousands of years with just regular families, totally non-religious families that could live out here in the suburbs. Go to the cemetery before a holiday, because this is a time of praying to God in a place of somebody who is special to them. Now, especially, of course, the place of a tzaddik, of somebody of the Rebbe's stature, is an extra special place. Why? And what are people doing there? Are they praying to God? Are they asking the Rebbe to deliver their prayers? What are the dynamics?
Well, as you said before, the resting place of a holy person, actually any resting place, any gravesite, the residue of the soul is believed to hover over the gravesite.
What do you mean the residue of the soul?
Well, there's a level of the soul, actually in Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism, it explains it's the highest level of the soul.
The highest level remains connected to the physical body.
Because the body was the carriage, was the means that the soul reached spiritual heights, because during the person's lifetime the person did good deeds which led the soul to be elevated. That's why the highest level of the soul stays where the body was interred.
So by visiting, a person in a certain degree becomes connected in the environs of the essence of the soul.
Correct. Now, this applies much more so when you talk about a holy person. The spiritual quality of the soul that's in the gravesite of a holy person is very intense. And that's the reason, because the place is so permeated with the holiness of the soul, that people come there to pray. And they feel that by praying at such a place, their prayers are heard on high, in the merit of the soul that's resting there.
Okay, so they're praying to God with
in the merit of the righteous person that's...
Okay, now people also, of course, when we go to the place of a tzaddik, it's a custom going back, again, thousands of years, just like people would write a letter to God at the coastal and put it into the wall. This in a different way. What are we doing? We're sitting down, and there's a large area, for those who might have visited the Ohel would know that there's a large tent, literally, which is right in back of the Chabad house with a courtyard. And people come there and they will sit and very pensively and with a tremendous amount of introspection, sometimes some tears or some joy, depending on what they're writing about, write what's called a pan, a pidyon nefesh, which is a personal letter of soul redemption, a soul letter really, that they're writing to God. Now, what is the nature of that? That letter is addressed to the Rebbe.
Yeah, that's another aspect of visiting the gravesite of a tzaddik.
Okay, can you explain that?
It dates back to the biblical times, when Joshua, when he came into Israel for the first time, he came before everyone else. It says he went straight to the gravesites of the patriarchs,
to Abraham, Isaac, and
Jacob, to pray there and to ask of them to intercede on his behalf that he should be successful in his mission in Israel.
Okay.
Subsequently, throughout the generations, Jews go to the gravesites of holy people, specifically of holy people who they were connected to, asking them to intercede on their behalf. So instead of speaking directly to God, they are asking the spirit of this holy person to intercede on their behalf on high. And this is done, the custom is that it's done through letter form. That's why people write the letter, they ask of the Rebbe's spirit to intercede on their behalf, take the letter and beseech before the heavenly throne.
Right, so I think it's important also to emphasize that this is a Jewish custom that goes back thousands of years. It's not something unique or different that is just happening because it's
back
the
to biblical
Rebbe.
times.
Right, back to biblical times. In fact, I think the point you're making about Joshua is really brought down in Rashi, one of the famous commentaries of the Torah, where he quotes that and he brings up that point that Joshua in fact did that. And he went to the Kivrei Tzadikim, to the graveside of the patriarchs. Now I want to bring up another point which I think you might catch some people by surprise, and that is that I've seen myself, and I've heard of course many situations where people from literally all walks of life, looking at this film that we saw, you might think that, well, it's just for Orthodox Jews. Well, that happened to be on the actual yahrzeit of the Rebbe, where thousands of Lubavitcher Hasidim and very Orthodox Jews might be going particularly that day, because the yahrzeit, the anniversary of his passing, has a very special significance. However, the fact is during the course of the year, and you know this better than anybody, you have literally people from all walks of life will come in. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the draw of this holy site to people from all walks of life, Jewish, not Jewish, religious, non-Jews, and people, from the most surprising. My son was there once on a Shabbos. He saw a Buddhist in an orange saffron robe come there in order to visit, because he had heard that this is the site of a holy tzaddik, of a holy man's burial, and he knew how powerful a place this would be. So give us an idea of the kinds of visitors you get to the Chabad house who are coming to the Ohel.
Well, as you said, there's people literally from all walks of life, Jews and non-Jews. What draws them there? I don't know. Primarily, I would say, I shouldn't say I don't know, for a variety of reasons. Primarily, people have heard of the Rebbe during his lifetime. They want to come and pay their respects, and they want to pray at this holy place. And people of all walks of life have heard of the Rebbe, and that's why they come. Many people who've never heard of the Rebbe, but have heard from people who've been at the Rebbe's gravesite and have been deeply impacted by the experience that they've had there, they hear about it and they want to come and see what it's all about, and then they come again and again and bring more people.
Now, you've talked to many of these people, I'm sure, afterwards. What kind of emotional reactions do most people get from the experience of going to the Ohel?
That varies too. It's
sure
very hard to gauge
people,
a spiritual impact.
That's very true.
It's very hard to gauge spiritual impact, but they come out deeply moved, feeling a presence of spirituality at this place. It can cause emotion. The emotion could express itself in tears, in joy, in a variety of it. I mean, I've spoken to, as you said, I've spoken to many people, and people are impacted in different ways, but they're all impacted.
Well, the amazing thing is that people normally think of a place of prayer as you go to a house of worship. And so this is something that's so unusual for people to go to pray in what people would normally just call a cemetery. But of course, this little cubicle within the cemetery is so intense in certain ways. You go in, as you walk in, there are many candles that are lit. As we saw in the film, you take your shoes off. Inside, there are some people that are shuffling back and forth, shaking back and forth, because it's traditional when we pray to put our whole body into it. There's some people who are crying, literally crying, because they feel a safe little place in the world where they can literally pour their heart out to God and ask the Rebbe to supplicate on high for them in a way that they would perhaps never do anyplace else. Right. And that's really, I think, like you said, the unique part of it, that it draws something out. You feel that connection there. You feel there's something, and it's really indescribable.
Right. I mean, there have been some occasions of people who come, for example, a TV cameraman who didn't come actually to pray or to receive any spiritual sustenance, but just, they told me after they came out that they felt the intensity of the holiness of the place.
Yeah, in fact, that happened with me also. I brought a Newsday photographer there and reporter, and the photographer told me afterwards, and he does all types of photography, he said that in his years of photography, he's never seen a place that had such an intense light. There was no special lighting in there, but he just felt as a photographer with the eye for light that there was a very special type of light that he identified there. Yeah. Just another thing I want to mention as well, which will put things into a little perspective, that of course we know in Judaism that we believe that Israel, as is the belief of many, many religions, Israel is the Holy Land. Why? Because Israel is considered to be the holiest place in the world. The land itself has a holiness. In Israel itself, Jerusalem is considered to be the holiest. In Jerusalem itself, the Har HaBayis, right by where the temple was built near where the Western Wall is today, is considered to be the holiest. And on Har HaBayis, on the Temple Mount itself, of course, the section where the rock is, where the Holy of Holies would stand, is considered to be the holiest of that. So we have this belief of different types of levels of holiness of different places in the world. This is why very often we will travel to Jerusalem specifically in order to be able to bring our prayers to God. But of course, for many of us, going to the Rebbe is like going to the Holy of Holies. It's like going to the Temple Mount. It's like being literally in that special place where heaven and earth meet. and where you have that combination of the two to the point where it's not a long distance phone call, as the joke goes. You don't have to pay a lot of money to be able to connect, because it's very, very, very easy almost to touch that spirituality, and people constantly walk away feeling that. And that's really an amazing type of experience, and I would of course encourage anybody to try to experience it. Do you have any stories you can tell us about different people and their own personal experience? I know there have been many stories of people who have come to God to ask for blessings and ask the Rebbe to supplicate for them for what would, in terms of nature, be considered to be absolute miracles. And their prayers have been answered. And they attributed directly, of course, to experiences at the Rebbe. I've had experiences myself at the Ohel of answers. Things in life have happened as a result, and almost immediately, if not very soon afterwards, that can only be attributed to something very unique and special that's happening at the Ohel. That's there because of the connection with the Rebbe. Anything you can share with us as far as types of experiences that people have?
Well, as I said before, you mentioned the miraculous aspect, the people's supplications are heard, the people's requests are answered, that miracles happen. In terms of health, people ask for speedy recoveries,
right, and
they recover from the illnesses in miraculous ways, and a host of other miracles. But to me, the most powerful area that you see is the personal impact of standing in the presence of such spirituality and seeing people impacted in such a powerful way. Just last night someone was telling me that he'd just come out of the Ohel. He told me he was driving with his family and they were getting lost in the dark streets on the way. If anyone knows Cambria Heights, it's there's some dark streets. And when he came to the Ohel, he prayed, and when he came out, he told his family, we just came and it was dark, and now I feel so light. I feel the intensity, the spirituality. My whole life has been brightened up by this experience. And many tell of these experiences.
Interesting. Now, Rabbi Refson, also, of course, in addition to people coming to the Chabad house in order to be able to just visit, but in order to visit the Ohel, you have, of course, sometimes 50, 100, sometimes 1,000 guests spending the Sabbath with you, or the Jewish holidays, or special Hasidic holidays. Right. Of course, there have been a number of houses that have been bought over there, a number of different things going on, meetings and different things. Of course, there's no community building there, and there's no plans of building any type of community there, but there are, because of its holiness, people like to congregate there and to get together to continue the Hasidic tradition and to make that special connection to the Rebbe, whether it be a Hasidic Farbrengen, or whether it be any types of meetings. So I'm sure that, besides taking care of people and helping them understand the experience, and if they have questions for you concerning what the proper way to approach such an intense spiritual experience, you also have a lot of other things going on as well. Yes, so correct. I'm sure that keeps you very busy.
It does, yes. As I said, Shabbos, Hasidim who want to spend the Shabbos at this holy place, obviously you can't drive on Shabbos, so people actually stay in the vicinity. There's a few houses that we purchased in the area where people stay, and sometimes on very busy times, on a special occasion, a special Jewish holiday, hundreds and sometimes over 1,000 people have stayed. Right. There's a public school nearby where people stay.
Right, which is really wonderful. I think also it's just credit should be given where credit is due. That Rabbi Joseph Goodlick, who's a great philanthropist from Australia, really has done an unbelievable service to the whole Jewish community by being the supporter of so many of the activities that they all, just in terms of the food for Shabbos, or in terms of the houses that are there to accommodate so many people to be able to have this experience. It's really a wonderful, wonderful mitzvah that he's done for so many people.
Right. He actually purchased the houses and
right,
and
I understand.
Them.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I want to ask you one last question on a personal level, if you don't mind. Okay. I often wondered what went on inside your mind when you decided that you weren't leaving the Rebbe's gravesite, that you weren't going to check out, so to say, like everybody else did. What was it that drove you to say, I can't leave my father, I can't leave my Rebbe, I have to stay here? Can you explain to our audience just a little bit of that sense? Of course, I can't get into the innermost feelings of a chassid's feeling towards his Rebbe, but what was it that you can share with us as far as what made you decide not to leave the spot? And of course, it was years and years before you even left the spot whatsoever, staying in the Chabad house and serving and helping out with all the activities and programs and people who would come to visit.
Well, as you said, it's a connection of a chassid to the Rebbe. Every chassid has a deep connection with his Rebbe, and therefore I don't believe there's a unique connection between me and the Rebbe than any other chassid. But it was a feeling that the Rebbe was interred here, and one wants to be close. I was a yeshiva student at the time, and yeshiva students always, besides being connected to the Rebbe in a spiritual way, they wanted to be close to the Rebbe in a physical way. They were always in close proximity to the Rebbe. The yeshiva was in Crown Heights, which was where the Rebbe lived, and the Rebbe's synagogue was there. So I guess maybe it was that. And besides that, there was also the aspect I saw from the beginning. There were so many people coming, people from all walks of life, and people who are not affiliated specifically with religion, and they didn't know what to do.
Perhaps just out of curiosity. They were coming and you wanted to make sure somebody should be there full time to be able to take care of their needs.
Right.
Interesting. Okay. Well, thank you for that answer. Now one more question of my life answered. All right. Thank you, Rabbi Rafson. I really appreciate you joining us and being with us and sharing the incredible strength and inspiration and power of the experience of the Ohel with our audience. And I hope that everybody out there will really see it in the perspective that it's meant to be taken. It's a very holy site. The fact is that we have this site very close to Long Island. It's on the Long Island border with Queens. It's right off the Southern State, right off the Cross Island Parkway, and very easily accessible. We have a phone number, in fact, also, if anybody's interested, if we could put up that phone number for people to be able to call, to speak to Rabbi Refson, or to fax to him, or to just have that experience in whatever way it might be meaningful. So if we could put that up, the phone number, of course, is 718-723-4545, or the fax number is 718-723-4444. So it's really an experience that I would strongly recommend to everybody to be able to have that one time of praying, whether it be Jewish or non-Jewish, to pour your heart out and realize and experience the specialness of this place. In the meantime, I want to wish everybody a good evening, and please think a little bit about what the power of a tzaddik soul can be. And let's hope the time will come soon when Mashiach will come, we will have Techiyas HaMesim, and we'll be able to all be reunited in Jerusalem with all of our tzaddikim and all of our great leaders once again. Shalom. Good night.
Moshiach bo, sis besim, besim, hasagi yulo,